Hey everyone, Ben here from MTG Dungeon. These are magic cards. They're NFC miscuts, and I want to give them away. Here's an example of what one looks like. Here is a Graph Digger's Cage miscut, and just to show you that I'm not actually messing around, there's a bunch. There's a bunch of these. How do you get one? Well, I'll tell you at the end of the video. Let's dive in to some nostalgic news. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Nostalgic News. As you can see, today I'll be talking about Birthing Pod. I just want to give a quick shout out to Inked Gaming. Your game, your style. What does that mean? Well, they have a bunch of gaming supplies that you can purchase. Dice bags, binders, mouse pads, play mats, and more. And what they do for you is they put your desired image on these products. Very awesome. We have a link in the description down below. Please click it to go check them out. If you use that link, it helps us and it helps them. All right. So, Birthing Pod. As you can see here, it's an artifact and it costs 3 generic mana and a Phyrexian green. Now, Phyrexian mana means you can pay life or pay the color that it is. In this case, it's green. It has an activated ability of pay 1 generic mana and a Phyrexian green tap, sack a creature.
We offer our 6 hearts unto you as sacrifices.
Search your library for a creature with a converted mana cost of 1 more than the sacked creature. Put it into play, shuffle your library. This thing screams value to me. This thing wants you to pay attention to your creature curve in your deck. The things that you would do with this card would usually revolve around Melira, Sylvok Outcast. The important part is that it passes the bear test. No, I'm just kidding. The real important part, well, actually that is important, but it's not the important part. The middle text line here, it says creatures you control can't have -1/-1 counters placed on them. This pairs perfectly with Persist. Persist says when this creature is put into a graveyard from play, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return it to play under its owner's controller with a -1/-1 counter. Going back to Sylvok Outcast, that thing says, nuh-uh, that ain't happening. No -1/-1 counter for you.
This can't be happening.
This card is a sack outlet for it. Viserys Seer. Sack creature is the cost to scry 1 on this 1/1 for 1 black. So as you can see, if you have these 3 creatures out, you could sack Kitchen Finks to Viserys Seer, scry 1, Kitchen Finks comes into play. Sylvok Outcast says, nah, you're good as you are. You don't need that counter. And it goes, hey, thanks, guy. Appreciate it. So, it also has the ETB effect. Gain 2 life. So if you get these 3 cards in play and your opponent doesn't have any responses, you gain infinite life. Which is great, but that doesn't end the game. But this guy does. Murderous Redcap. Enters the battlefield, it's a 2/2, and it deals damage equal to the power to target creature or player. So with Sylvok Outcast and a sack outlet, that's infinite damage. I'm not complaining. This card's real good. At least with this combo. By itself, arguably not so good. But still not bad. This Deceiver Exarch is amazing. As I said earlier, Birthing Pod asks you to look at your creature curve. This is 3, so it's perfect in between the 4 and the 2 of like Melira and Murderous Redcap. It hits 3. So it says flash 1/4 for 2 and a blue, ETB. Choose 1. Untap target permanent you control or tap target permanent opponent controls. Sometimes you're not going for combo, you're just trying to not die. But in the instance that you're sacking a 2-drop to go get a 3-drop, you get this one. You put it into play, you untap Birthing Pod, and if you have at least 1 mana and 2 life, or 1 mana and 1 green, you get to pod again and go get a 4-drop, which is great. So you could skip the curve on 3 with this guy. It's amazing. Birds of Paradise is a card that was commonly used in these Birthing Pod strategies. So you'd play like turn 1 Tweeter, turn 2 Birthing Pod, paying 2 life, untap turn 3, you play a 2-drop, you tap the bird, pay 2 life, sack the 2-drop, go get a 3-drop, go get Deceiver Exarch, untap that Birthing Pod. Or untap the bird or something. Or, Kitchen Finks. Phantasmal Image is a perfect card for the deck. So the thing about clone effects are when it copies something, it copies the converted mana cost. So if you need, or if your opponent has something that costs maybe like 5 and you want a 6-drop out of your deck, you can just play like Phantasmal Image, copy their thing, sack it to Birthing Pod, go get a 6-drop. So for 2 mana, you played a 2 mana plus the cost of Birthing Pod. You got a tutor for
a 6-drop.
And then Phyrexian Metamorph is just also awesome. So it's just an additional clone effect, technically on 3, but for the purposes of Birthing Pod, it's on 4. And then sometimes you just get an additional Birthing Pod. Yeah, you heard me. An additional Birthing Pod, because it copies artifacts. So this episode is a nostalgic news, right? This card is very nostalgic for me. This requires a little bit of explanation, because on the face, it's a 5/6 for 3 with some drawback. As an additional cost to cast it, you have to exile 3 creatures from your graveyard as flying, and then you can play it from your graveyard. It has a pretty steep cost to actually play. It requires you to put cards in the bin already or creatures in the bin in order to cast it. But with Birthing Pod, you're not casting it. You're just putting it into, so you get to ignore the additional cost. So you just get like turn 1 bird, turn 2 Birthing Pod, turn 3 play a 2-drop, go tutor Scab Ruinator. And then you're like, what? Deal with this 5/6. You need a spot removal. There's not much burn that deals with this card very well. You need something that just removes a permanent, or I'm going to start smacking you for 6. Or for 5. Kind of gross. I've had a competitive game where I've just played did exactly that and then followed it up with clones, just cloning Scab Ruinator. 5/6, 5/6, 5/6. Can you get rid of them? You don't have a Wrath of God or something? No? Okay, then I guess you just lose, because 5/6 flyers are hard to deal with. That was my take on it, right? But the events that led up to it, not so great. One day, a group of friends of mine wanted to play at F&M. Our local game store wasn't playing the format that we wanted to play. So we decided to take a trip down south, about 40 minutes south of where we were, a 40-minute drive, and play at a different LGS. We get there, we play, we had a good time. Like, I brought way too much stuff with me. I brought everything worth anything everywhere to every F&M. I didn't think that it was a bad idea at the time. It's kind of a bad idea. But we go to a local restaurant after we're done at F&M called AFK Tavern. When we're done at AFK Tavern, we go into the car, and I look around and I see there's trash strewn about everywhere. Granted, that's not really much different than it was, or than a normal state of my car at the time, because I worked a graveyard shift. I worked roughly 10 to 6, and I would sleep in late enough, or like to the last minute, to be able to spin through somewhere, get something to eat, and I'd leave the receipts in my car, wrap food wrappers in the car. It wasn't a very clean car, but I got in there and I noticed that things weren't the way I left them. And the thing that really stood out to me was one of my friends had a little Street Fighter figurine in a cardboard box. It's like those collectibles, the mystery pack collectible things, like get a Street Fighter, collect all the Street Fighter figures. But that thing was opened, and I saw Dalsim there sitting like in the cup holder. Like, that's not right. So I get up out of the car, and my friends are kind of looking at me weird. And I look at the trunk and all of our stuff's gone. We've been hit. The parking lot's been hit. I wasn't the only person that got hit. We lost our magic cards and something else. And so did some of our friends who we were borrowing cards from, which really sucks. The thing that annoyed me the most about it, though, was one of my friends that I was with, he's a type 1 diabetic, so he had his diabetic supplies in the trunk. So for the next couple of days, he was playing insulin levels roulette. And that's not cool. Unintended consequence of the thief, too. But, you know, they don't really care. They don't care. It sucked. Anyway, I get back home and I tell all my friends about what happened because they need to know that, like, especially since I was borrowing some cards from people. It's like, I'll do whatever I can to replace them. Like, some of the cards I was borrowing, they weren't cheap either. Like, I was borrowing dual lands from people. So those cards weren't cheap. And some of my friends got together and they gave me a birthing pod deck basically to continue going to F&M with. And that was a godsend to keep me in the game. I was really considering quitting. All I had left were like a bunch of commons and uncommons and a Japanese Jace versus Chandra dual deck. The big reason why I decided not to quit was I wasn't ready to give the game up, even though everything was taken from me. It was such a big and important part of my life, and I didn't really want to do anything else anyway. And that speaks volumes about the game itself. Yeah. But let's continue. Birthing Pod also had some other tools available. Acidic Slime, awesome ETB effect, high on the curve. You know, sack Murderous Red Cap to get that Acidic Slime. You can sack Acidic Slime to get things like Titans, which were around, which are crazy good. But as it rotated out of the format, you'd have things like Kiki Jiki, which comboed very well with, I don't know, Deceiver Exarch or Restoration Angel. Because I'll go back to Kiki. It says tap. It's a 2/2 with haste for 5. Tap, put a creature token into play that's a copy of a non-legendary you control. That creature token gains haste sacrifice at the end of the turn. So you get Deceiver Exarch or Restoration Angel. Deceiver Exarch token untaps Kiki Jiki, and then Restoration Angel exiles it and puts it back into play immediately. And whenever any card leaves a zone, goes from zone to zone, it's technically not treated as the same copy of the card. So in the case of Restoration Angel, you blink Kiki Jiki, and then the game state recognizes that a new Kiki Jiki is coming into play, and it comes into play untapped. Another iteration of the Birthing Pod decks, they ran Spike Feeder, which the important part is the last one. It enters the battlefield with 2 1/1 counters on it, and then the last ability is remove a 1/1 counter on it to gain 2 life, which pairs perfectly with Archangel of Thune. So, Archangel of Thune says, whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So you remove a counter from here, gain 2 life. This sees that you gain 2 life, puts a counter on everything, and it's right back where it was. So you just get to do it again. Pretty gross. So it's infinite life and infinite big dudes. So it's technically infinite damage if they couldn't block, right? Eternal Witness is a perfect value fit. It fit well in the Birthing Pod chain at 3. So you could, like, if you needed to build your chain and you had Melira, you could play Melira out and then sack it to Birthing Pod to go get Eternal Witness. And since Melira went to the graveyard, you get it back in your hand to play later. Or you could just get something else that you need. It's perfect. And then you could sack this to go get Murderous Red Cap or Phyrexian Metamorph. And then Revelark was also awesome. Perfect value card. You could sack it to Birthing Pod or to a Visair Seer. And trigger its ability says whenever it leaves play, return up to 2 target creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to play. So you could just literally go get an infinite damage combo. from your graveyard and put it into play, which is also insane. And then you go get a 6-drop. So you get, I don't know, like a Sun Titan or something. And get back a CMC 3 card. Awesome. So we're here towards the end of the video. I have some very sentimental cards to share with you. So these are alternate art done by the artist Darkin himself. How I got these were, we saw that Pro Tour Worlds, the official Pro Tour Worlds event in 2008 was being held in San Francisco. And we decided, a group of us and I, to bolt down there. We left at 3:30 on a Thursday and made a 14-hour drive straight down to San Francisco. And we arrived around 8 o'clock in the morning and then participated in side events and watched some PT coverage in person. While I was waiting for a side event to kick off, one of my friends came out to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to go wait in line. Darkin's doing alters and signatures. Do you have any of his cards that you want done?" Well, I had birthing pods on me. And he gave me... Oh, it's upside down. Sorry, it's upside down. He gave me a bender pod. Shut up, baby. I know it. He gave me an alien pod, which I find to be very flavorful for what birthing pod does. We have R2 pod. Ooh, beep, beep, boop. Go get bigger things. And then last but not least, of course, we have Polka Pod, which I feel like is not quite as flavorful as Alien Pod, but Polka Pod, close enough, close enough. Okay, so you made it to the end. We have a giveaway for you. I told you that we would tell you how to get it, and this is how you get it. Comment down below the correct answer, and a week from when I post this video, I will contact a random person in the comment section who commented the correct answer. What restaurant did we go to in the town that we went for a different LGS's F&M? So we participated in a different LGS's F&M, and then we went somewhere. Where did we go? So if you like what we're doing here on the channel, we have their link in the description below. Check out their sweet product. Get yourself a custom mouse pad or a play mat or a dice bag or something. Real appreciate it. All right. Thank you all for tuning in. And remember, happy magicking.